Good morning, Who Dat Nation, and happy Week 10 to our Bayou Blitz family. If you're a New Orleans Saints fan, it might not be an overly thrilling Week 10, but nonetheless, here we are. Man, has time flown, and man, have our New Orleans Saints gone from a promising contender early in the season to, in my opinion, the worst team in the National Football League. The numbers bear out that if not the worst, certainly one of the worst. And with that note, I am Bob Rose. I'm one of your co-hosts to your Bayou Blitz pregame show. Joining me from the shadows of North Carolina is my partner, Brendan Boylan. Happy Week 10, Brendan.
Yeah, happy Week 10. Actually, the shadows of South Carolina. Maybe I can open up one of these other blinds and not make it look so bad.
You're good.
But yeah, happy Week 10. The Saints are depleted. The Saints have no receivers. They have no corners. They have one running back. I might have to fly out to New Orleans here real quick so I can suit up. But with that, let's go ahead and jump into it. But before we do that, we'll tell you that today's pregame show is sponsored by, of course, Underdog Fantasy. I want you guys to think, will Alvin Kamara rack up higher than 75 and a half rushing yards today? Will MVS get lower than receiving touchdown? For all that, you can cook up some entries for a shot to win real cash prizes all football season long. Underdog is the best place to cash in on all your takes this football season. Remember, vulture protection. If you select the designated running back to score a touchdown in your pick of entry and they get vultured, we will rescue your entry. Yes, Underdog will. So you don't have to worry about those guys who get hurt in the second snap of the game ruining your entire pick'em entry. You can join over 5 million fans already playing on Underdog with their champs game. You could win money by entries with your favorite players. Remember, Bob and I actually won some money last week, so you might want to tail this one as well. So go ahead, download the app today. Use code Bayou Blitz to get up to $1,000 in bonus cash instantly. Again, download the app and use Bayou Blitz as your promo code to get up to $1,000 in bonus cash instantly. Must be 18 or older, 19 or older in Alabama or Nebraska, 19 or older in Colorado for some games, 21 or older in Massachusetts and Arizona. Got to be present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. Void in Colorado. Concerned with your play? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.ncpgambling.org. If you're in Arizona, call 1-800-NEXT-STEP or text NEXT-STEP to 53342. New York, you can always call 24/7 Hope line at 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY. Well, let's go ahead and knock this one out. Our options are limited, as you can imagine today.
So are the Saints, so that works out well.
Yeah, it works both ways. So we are going to start with MVS, which is one of the receivers where the average sports fan may actually recognize his name. He's going to be needed today. Obviously, hasn't seen a whole lot of action since he signed with the Saints, but he's one of 4 active receivers on the roster today, and that includes or does not include one of your friends in St. Brown, who did not get elevated from the practice squad.
Yeah,
to the 53-man today. A little odd, but MVS, I think this is an interesting line. 26 and a half receiving yards, higher or lower. I know where I'm leaning, Bob, but where is Bob leaning?
Man, over the last month, 6 weeks, I don't see how you can have any confidence in the Saints offense whatsoever. But with Chris Olave, Rashid Shaheed, and Bub Means all on injured reserve, like you said, next to Valdez Scantling, they're only going to have Mason Tipton, Dante Pettis, and Kevin Austin Jr. Jermaine Jackson is elevated as well. He'll be primarily a returner. So, what are we looking at? 26 and a half. I think you got to go higher on the 26 and a half this week. I don't feel confident in that pick whatsoever. But yeah, Derek Carr just doesn't have anybody else to throw to. And in last week's game, Chris Olave, as everybody knows, was knocked out on like the third or fourth offensive play of the game for the Saints, leaving them with the receiving core that we're going to see today. And as a result, Alvin Kamara led the team in receiving yards, receptions, and targets, all by a wide margin. I do expect Juwan Johnson to get some targets today, but you got to have somebody emerge from the receiving core. And 26 and a half yards isn't exactly emerging, but Valdez Scantling being the most tenured veteran by far, out of this group, you got to believe that he's going to see the majority of the targets, at least out of that unit specifically.
Well, the reason I like MVS for higher than that number is out of all of the receivers you just named, he might be the biggest deep ball threat.
Yeah.
And so you're looking at a team that doesn't have a whole lot of offensive weapons. I know Kamara has had a storied career against Atlanta, but you have to imagine that Atlanta is going to throw everything they can at Alvin Kamara, both in the running game and in the passing game, and really bracket him. As silly as that sounds to bracket a running back coming out of the backfield, but you would only imagine that the Falcons defense is really going to swarm in on Kamara. So I like the higher there as well. I'll throw one more at you for MVS if you like this one a little better. Higher than 2.5 receptions. Don't know if you love that number, but I'll let you pick between the two.
I might like it less.
That's fair. That is fair. We'll go higher than 26 and a half receiving.
Yeah, that sounds good. Because Valdez Scantling throughout his career has been a downfield threat. I can envision a receiving line, a statistic line today, like 3 receptions and 31 yards. Which gives would give us a higher on both counts. But I think I don't have confidence in Atlanta's defense. But I have less confidence in the New Orleans offense. I will hesitantly and reluctantly go with the higher.
That's where I was leaning. So, all right, we'll get to Alvin Kamara next. There's a couple different options we have here. I'll throw 3 your way. You tell me which one you like the best. Higher than 70.5 rushing yards. Lower, of course. Higher or lower than 38.5 receiving yards. Higher or lower than 5.5 receptions. Or the higher or lower of 17 rushing attempts. He is the only running back on the roster.
Yeah, he is the only running back, unless you count Jordan Mims. I kind of lean towards the higher in all 3 categories. I think the one I'd be most confident about are the rushing yards. Because Kamara had 100, and the first time these teams met, which obviously was a far different product that the Saints put on the field. Kamara had 119 yards from scrimmage. 77 of those were rushing. But Atlanta. Atlanta ranks 20th in total defense, 19th against the pass, but they're 23rd against the rush, and they've given up 4.6 yards per attempt on the ground. If the Saints can stay in the game, particularly early on, that Kamara has got to be a big part of that effort. He's liable. Aside from maybe Taysom Hill, he is liable to be the only source of offense for the Saints today. Against that depleted squad versus the Panthers last week, Kamara tied or exceeded his career best in yards from scrimmage, with 215. 155 of those were on the ground, tying a career high. 60 of those on 6 catches, were as a receiver. You got to think though, that the Saints don't want to get into a shootout either. They can't, because they're just as bad on defense, if not worse. So Darren Rizzi, Clint Kubiak, they're probably going to want to control the ball on the ground, and limit the amount of chances that Kirk Cousins gets the football. I'd lean. I think Kamara will go higher on all 3 categories you're listed. I feel most comfortable, I think, with the rushing yardage.
Okay. Is he going to score today? That's another question.
Saints may not score at all. He may not. Taysom Hill, assuming Taysom stays healthy, and remember, Taysom had 2 touchdowns the first time these teams met before Hill was knocked out of the game with injury at that time. Taysom Hill, you talk about a storied career that Alvin Kamara has had against the Falcons. Taysom Hill has been an absolute beast, against Atlanta. I think I can see Kamara being used primarily as a decoy near the goal line, and other guys like MVS, Foster Moreau, and obviously Taysom Hill, maybe getting the chances, especially like inside the 5.
All right, last one today for underdog. We're going to go to the only Korean American in the NFL today, Young Wei-koo, one of the better kickers in the NFL. These are the 2 I'll shoot your way. They're very similar. One, higher than 1.5 field goals made, so they make 2 field goals. The other is higher than 7.5 kicking points, which would be the equivalent of 2 field goals and an extra point, or some combination there.
I'll go higher on the field goals specifically. Because Atlanta's defense looks solid statistically, but they're not putting a lot of points on the board. Aside from when they play Tampa Bay. Again, they're not. The Falcons aren't playing a good defense at all in the New Orleans Saints. But I think the New Orleans is going to come out emotional, and we'll get more into this in a minute. I think New Orleans is going to come out on an emotional high, especially on the defensive side, and that could limit the Falcons. And for the most part, the Saints have still remain okay in the red zone. So I think Koo is going to put more points on the board via field goals than through extra points today.
All right, we're going to lock that in. And the other question: are we going to lock in the flex, or are we going to try to go 3 for 3 today?
You want to do flex?
It sounds great.
All right. I'm obviously not feeling confident about any of these picks.
Well, if we get all 3 on the flex, we 2.5 times our money. So we have put the play in, and we have it readily available now. I will tweet it out momentarily for those who have who are coming in late or catching this on the replay before kickoff. Bob, let's talk about this. Lots happened with the Saints since the last time we really got to chat with everybody. Obviously, we saw everybody on Thursday, but we had Courtney Roby on the show and really enjoyed our chat with Courtney. But we didn't really get to talk about some things. Darren Rizzi, his first game as the man in charge, as the interim man in charge. There does seem to be a little bit more of a energy around the team in practice this week, despite all the injuries. A lot of great things being said about Rizzi, and it seems like there's a more pep in the step of the team. There were some rumors that Dennis Allen had lost the team as far back ago as the final game of the regular season last year, according to James Hurst. So
presented to you by Our Water is Wet breaking news.
There you go. So, Bob, what do you expect? Obviously, a lot of injuries. This is a very different team. I think there have been some signs from the organization that they believe that the year is pretty much over, with some guys hitting IR specifically. What do you expect out of this team, and what do you hope to see out of a Darren Rizzi-led team today?
Well, I mean, first of all, you mentioned the injuries. The official inactive report is this: Kool-Aid McKinstry, Cedric Wilson, Jamal Williams, Jalen Ford, Lucas Patrick, Christian Boyd, all out. Spencer Rattler designated as the third quarterback. Back safety Will Harris. Offensive lineman Shane Lemieux, and of course that doesn't count the most recent injured reserve additions of Chris Olave, and Kendra Miller, as you alluded to. We mentioned what that leaves them at wide receiver, what that leaves them at running back. At cornerback, similar to last week, you're looking at Alontae Taylor, Rico Payton, Gene Charles, and I believe Trey Herndon is still on the active roster. I expect Will Harris to play at least some slot corner in that mix too. But what I think we'll see out of the Saints today again is an emotionally charged team. The criticism of Dennis Allen from the start has been, well, he's not an emotional guy. He's not a guy to grab you by the face mask, or scream and holler and get a team motivated that way. In that regard, Darren Rizzi is the bizarro Dennis Allen. He is, he's a fiery guy. He's an intense guy. And remember, folks, the very first thing out of his mouth, when he got to the podium after being an appointed interim head coach, was that we're going to fight, we're going to play hard, and we're not going to be boring to watch. Well, those are the three things that we didn't see out of Dennis Allen teams for the most part, certainly this season at all, but really throughout his 2+ year tenure. So the other thing that I noticed when a team does, and we haven't seen this much out of the Saints, as a matter of fact, this will only be the 6th time in 58 years. But when other teams have made a coaching move in midseason, what you typically see is that team to play at an emotional high. For at least a week or two, and then typically that kind of settles in, levels off, and then then they more often than not remind you why they were bad enough to get their coach fired in the first place. That's kind of what I expect out of the New Orleans Saints today. They're playing a division rival. They're playing at home. The leaders on this team, Alvin, Kamara, Cam Jordan, Demario Davis, they're pissed. And if you believe Cam's remarks, they're just as pissed at themselves, than they are at the whole situation. These guys like Darren Rizzi, and for Darren Rizzi to be given any real consideration for the permanent head coaching job after the season, the team's going to have to play well, right? And we know that there aren't a lot of pieces left, but I think that they believe in that locker room that they coulda, woulda, shoulda won at least 3 of the games that they lost. One of those games were to the Atlanta Falcons, where in typical Dennis Allen team fashion, mistakes kept the Falcons in the game throughout the first 3.5 quarters, and then a late defensive breakdown gave away the victory. I'm very interested to see if the Saints are going to fix their sloppy play on the field. But I do believe that this team is going to play hard. I think that they're going to play with emotion. And, frankly, I think the Falcons are going to have to contend with a little bit of a buzzsaw, at the beginning of the game. Now, again, in these situations, when things go wrong for a team that's in a funk, that usually negates that emotional high that we expect to see early on. So, the Saints are not only going to have to play hard and fast, but they're going to have to play crisp. Otherwise, a couple things pop up that, when adversity rears its ugly head, they could go right back into I almost said something else. They could go right back into the tank again. But I do expect the team to play with a lot more emotion than what we've seen.
It would be nice to get that right out the gate. You're going to have the home crowd behind you today. A lot of that home crowd, very happy at the coaching change. That's no secret to anybody. And Alvin Kamara closing in on breaking a franchise record held by Mark Ingram. I'm sure you have the number right in front of you, but he is projected today to go ahead and surpass Mark Ingram as the Saints' all-time leader in rushing yards. So if they can also knock that out pretty early in the game, you're going to get the crowd behind you. You're going to have a nice reception for Kamara. And we haven't been able to say it a whole lot over the last few years, Bob, that dome field advantage. But in a game like this where emotions are high for the players, a new head coach, a record on the line, a crowd and a fan base that is just dying and itching for a victory at this point, or even just entertaining football at this point. If the Saints can come out and start hot, I think you could very quickly get that Superdome crowd behind you.
Yeah, I agree with that. And you alluded to Kamara, especially. That man's been a warrior all year long. Yeah,
too for the rest of the year.
Yeah. Yeah, he's on pace for his first 1,000-yard season. He's on pace to set a career high, for yards from scrimmage. And today he can pass up his good friend and mentor Mark Ingram. With 12 rushing yards, Kamara becomes the Saints' all-time rushing leader. He already holds the all-time leading spot in rushing attempts, rushing touchdowns, total touchdowns, yards from scrimmage, receptions for a running back, receiving yards for a running back, and receiving touchdowns for a running back. This is truly a franchise icon. And I think in a way, some fans or media members have kind of taken that for granted. We recognize that Kamara is a great player, great guy, fun guy to be around, and crucial to team success. But when you step back and look at the numbers that I just threw out there, and realize he's only been in the league 8 years. It feels like a lot longer. How much Alvin Kamara truly means to not only this New Orleans Saints team, but New Orleans Saints history, and we're honestly we're privileged to having watched him play.
Absolutely, I think it says a lot for Alvin too, as you've seen guys, particularly from that draft class over the last few years, leave, whether it be Hendrickson in free agency, obviously Lattimore getting traded. How vocal he was about wanting to be here, wanting to figure it out, getting the contract extension done. I think that speaks a lot to not just how much he's endeared by the fans here and how much the fans wanted to stay, but how much Alvin Kamara has really embraced New Orleans since being drafted in 2017. And remember how difficult of a journey Kamara had through college, being a top recruit, getting to Alabama, leaving Alabama, going to JUCO, really sharing a backfield in Tennessee, and then coming to New Orleans as a third-round pick. And let's face it, Bob, we've seen it over the years. Third-round picks a lot of times don't pan out to even be on the roster for a few years, let alone go down as the greatest running back in the franchise's history. So I tip my cap to Alvin Kamara. I hope when the record gets broken today, that he gets a good reception for it. Obviously, they're not going to shut the game down or anything like they did when Breeze broke the passing record, but that was also an NFL record. But I do hope that is recognized well today. A Saints victory would help a lot as well. Let's talk about that in these last few minutes we have before we dart off the air. Keys to victory today. I know it's hard. It's almost a laughable thing to talk about due to the injuries that the Saints have, the fact that the Falcons are a team that are going to compete to win the NFC South. How can the Saints kind of spoil some of that momentum that Atlanta has? And how do you keep these receivers in check? Not a lot of huge names like in years past, Roddy Whites, no Julio Joneses for the red and black. A lot of guys that outside of Drake London that people may not be super familiar with, but some very dangerous weapons, including a guy like Darnell Mooney.
And that's just it. Defensively, and so many people, most people, want to blame this funk, that the Saints are in on Dennis Allen or Derek Carr or the injuries, and I get all that, and that is all part of it. Other than myself, I'll give myself a pat on the back for this. And you seconded a lot of this. I haven't seen, other than us, a whole lot of people be critical of the Saints defense, which has been beyond awful since week 4. Week 3 was the Philadelphia loss, right? So week 3, this defense needs to make some plays. And, unlike the offense, the defense was relatively healthy up until the secondary the last 2 or 3 weeks. And now you're talking about a depleted secondary. Well, up front, you still have, Cam, who's been invisible. I mean, it's clear that Cam is on his last legs, NFL player-wise. But Chase Young, Brian Bresee, Demario Davis, Pete Werner, where are the game-changing plays? Carl Granderson has been solid, not spectacular. Where are the game-changing plays? And that's where the Saints are going to have to make a difference on that side of the ball this afternoon. You're going to have to rattle Kirk Cousins. You're going to have to beat him up. History shows us that when you get to Cousins, when you beat him around a little bit, he'll not only throw the ball to you interception wise, he'll cough it up too. He'll fumble it. The Saints need to make some plays in that way. Because aside from Alontae Taylor, there's no playmaker in the secondary. Tyrann Mathieu will occasionally show flashes, but he's a shadow of his former self, and forget tackling. So the Falcons are smart; they know this, so they're not going to throw at Alontae Taylor as often as you'd think. Mainly because there are just so many other people to throw to and throw at in the Saints secondary. To combat that, DeMario, Chase, Granderson, Brissy, those guys, they're going to have to make plays up front, and they're going to have to absolutely shut down the run. Bijan Robinson had a good bit of success on the ground. Tyler Algier had even better success on the ground when these teams met the first time. And one of the 2 times these teams faced last year. The Saints have been abysmal against the run. They need to shut that down. So, those are the keys on that side of the ball. It's going to be the front 7, specifically winning in the trench, not just winning in the trenches, finishing in the trenches, something that the team has not done at all year. Offensively, I know it sounds ridiculous to say, but you have to find a way to get Derek Carr into a rhythm. Throw into these no-name receivers, tight ends that had been largely invisible. You mentioned that the Falcons are going to bracket and just throw everything but the kitchen sink at Alvin Kamara. Kamara, you're still going to need to find, if you're Clint Kubiak, you're still going to need to find ways to not just get Kamara involved. That's the easy part. To get Kamara involved in ways that fit Alvin's top skill sets in the open, one-on-one in the open field, things like that. Taysom Hill needs to have a big day today. Needs to stay on the field. Taysom is going to be your inside runner, your between the tackles runner. He's got to have success that way. I wouldn't be surprised anyway if we saw Taysom take a lot more snaps as that wildcat quarterback. It was either last week or the week before, maybe both. Where we were finally kind of seeing that out of Taysom again. And now that he's healthy, or seems to be healthier, you can use him in different ways. I know you don't have any wide receivers to speak of. I know you don't have consistent tight ends. You still have Alvin Kamara and Taysom Hill, and you have to lean on them, even if it helps Carr get into a rhythm. And Derek Carr's the type of quarterback that if he gets some early confidence, then you might see Derek look for a Mason Tipton or a Dante Pettis, in a key situation where maybe the Falcons don't expect it. Again, that's not a winning formula. Jermaine Jackson, Dante Pettis, Kevin Austin, that's not a winning formula. Alvin Kamara plus Taysom Hill, plus Alvin Kamara plus Taysom Hill, plus Alvin Kamara plus Taysom Hill. That's your winning formula. But these other complementary players, can make plays, given the few opportunities that they're going to get. And that to me is the underrated key to Saints offensive success.
I think it's funny that you said Carr to get in a rhythm, because remember, I was very critical post game last week of Derek Carr, mostly for just not being able to complete very simple passes. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't that he didn't complete them; it's that he missed them.
Yeah,
like some high school quarterbacks could hit on some of those routes.
Yeah, it's clear he's nowhere near 100%.
And that raises another question, and maybe we get into that next week if he has another poor outing. But I do think it's important. You don't want to just continuously check the ball down, but you do want to, like you said, get in some sort of rhythm, just some simple 3-step drops, put your foot in the dirt and let it go. Hopefully some of these receivers, tight ends can create enough separation to where you can have some of that movement, some of that momentum on early drives. I'm not holding my breath for it, but that's definitely a key to success. On the other side for Atlanta, you brought up their offense. You also brought up the running game in Tyler Algier, who I don't think gets enough credit for being a very nice compliment to Bijan Robinson. But this is definitely a game where I can see those two eat. And another reason why people will look back and wonder why Bijan Robinson fell to the Falcons in the draft. I could see this being a game where we go back and go, look at Bijan go. All right, Bob, real quick, let's get some predictions and let people get their food ready and read some more of your articles before they switch the TV on. I guess I'll start. I don't see this going well. I just don't. And this one is more so, yes, they've played poorly. I think I'd have a little bit more confidence if they were healthier, just because you're going to have a new sense of energy and a new sense of this and that, because you have a new head coach or an interim head coach. And like Bob kind of alluded to, you have a week or two where you're kind of battling your ass off for a new guy, especially a guy who seems to be as liked as Darren Rizzi. I'd feel better if the Saints were healthy. And I think this is the first time all year where I'm going to use the injury excuse and go, well, they're not healthy. Because if they had Olave and they had Shaheed and they had some of the guys that are on IR, I do think the Saints could make some noise today and rally behind an interim head coach, but they don't. I think it's a fun time when you fire a head coach, because that next game out, you don't really know what you're going to get. So it is kind of one of those, life's like a box of chocolates kind of moments for the Saints. But they don't have anybody that can open the dang box of chocolate. That's how banged up they are today. So I think the Falcons' offense is going to have their way with a poor Saints defense. I do think Alvin Kamara has a good day. I do think Taysom Hill has his, typical career day against the Atlanta Falcons, but I just don't see it being enough. I see the Falcons taking this one 31-17 against the Saints. I hate to say that, but I just don't see it going well.
Yeah, it makes me sick to not only hear it but think it as well. And Brendan, that's the identical score I have. I have the Falcons 31-17.
Wow, we didn't talk about this before at all.
No,
we never talked about our predictions before, so that's funny.
No, we did not. I think this game is going to be close and probably entertaining early on, maybe even through the first three quarters. It's something interesting, too. In the first meeting between these teams last year and in the first meeting this year, the Falcons scored a defensive touchdown. I believe both of them were off Derek Carr interceptions. I can kind of see that same thing happening again. And, to do that, to give up a big turnover. Well, hell, I mean, it was not only that, but Rashid Shaheed's punt return fumble too, gave away a touchdown. I agree with what you said about thinking that Atlanta is going to have their way with the New Orleans defense. I know I outlined the keys, to the game, to the defensive game plan for the Saints, and that might come to fruition early on. I no longer think that this defense is talented enough or fiery enough to make the plays to win games. And it's not like Atlanta is a legitimate contender. I know they're 6-3. I know they're in control of the NFC South and really have a chance to put a kill shot on the rest of the division, with a win and a Tampa Bay loss today. But I don't view the Saints the Falcons as a legitimate contender. But they are playing better football, and right now they are far more talented than the team that they're going to be facing in the New Orleans Saints. And we're both in agreement that I look for the Saints to pull some trick plays today too. By the way, Rizzi just strikes me as that kind of guy. To keep other teams on their toes. Hey, Clint, what do you got in the bag as far as a flea flicker or a double reverse or Mason Tipton throwing a pass to Jermaine Jackson on a wide receiver reverse? I honestly expect that kind of thing today. And it's those kind of things that are going to keep the Saints in the game, that and emotion. But New Orleans just... They're a despondent group right now, the group that's left. The Saints just don't have the horses to compete. with a team that's 500 or better, and B, they don't have the emotion to stay in it for all 4 quarters, and I think those two things are going to lead directly to a effing Falcons win.
Well, with that, Bob, I know that you've put some work out, and you've got some articles that are ready to be perused over before the start of the Week 10 matchup between the Saints and the Falcons. So where can people follow you and get those last-minute article reads in?
Yeah, and I put a kind of a fun one. At least I had fun writing it about the Saints' history of interim coaches. The other 5 men that preceded Darren Rizzi as interim coaches. Lengthy piece, but it was a fun research piece, and that's already out on my page in the Saints News Network. And you can follow, those articles along with the ones that we're going to be writing through the day-to-day and the upcoming week on the Saints News Network, si.com, or my own personal pages, which is Bob Rose on Facebook, at Bobby R 2613 on X Twitter, and obviously we all, Brendan and I, hope that you are already doing so, but if not, please give our Bayou Blitz Facebook group a follow and our Bayou Blitz Twitter page a follow. Brendan talked about the interview that we had with Courtney Roby, and of course the ongoing promotion that the Bayou Blitz is very proud to do with Shireen DeWalt and several former Saints greats, in promoting the upcoming Go Black and Gold Celebrity Fan Cruise. We're going to have a very, very special guest and another New Orleans Saints legend on our Bayou Blitz telecast this coming Wednesday at 8 p.m. Central Time, 9 p.m. if you're on the East Coast. So stay tuned for that. If you missed our show with Courtney Roby or any of our other shows, you can check out the Bayou Blitz on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or several other places.
Wherever you get your podcasts, as I like to say, there are too many places to actually name. For myself, you can follow me virtually everywhere at BT Boylan. I will be putting out our underdog pick for this week if you guys want to tail that. We'll see what happens. You got to start stacking them up, right? We got one last week, so maybe we can make it 2 in a row. The Saints are looking to make it just 1 in a row. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. We really appreciate you guys tuning in to us to the pregame show. Bob and I will be back on Wednesday, like he alluded to, with a very special guest. I'm really liking this, Bob, being able to bring in former players almost every week. At least bi-weekly, but lately it's been seeming like every week, being able to pick the brains of and go down memory lane, especially when it's been a poor season. I'm sure you listeners have enjoyed going down memory lane with these guys as well. We're really excited to continue to talk to these guys and continue to promote a great cruise and a great cause. So continue to hang out with us. Bob, we'll see if the Saints can pull it out against their bitter rivals today. Until Wednesday, hope you guys will know we'll have a post-game wrap-up. So until you guys hear us on Monday on Spotify, Apple, or wherever you get your podcasts, I'm Brendan Boylan. That is Bob Rose. There you go. There's Bob Rose. Hope you guys find some peace, spread love, practice positivity, enjoy the game, and who dat?
Who dat?